we'll kind of let that keep going, but let's go ahead and kick it off. So welcome. If you're here for the Optimize and Monetize content webinar, you're in the right place. We've got a pretty good agenda today. So really the goal is to hear from really leading brands and folks who are at various stages of the digital maturity and monetizing content, and to hear what works, what doesn't work. We have a pretty eclectic crew on the call today, so I'll kick it off first just by some quick introductions and housekeeping, just to get that out of the way. So we will be, as mentioned, we'll cover the topic of how to optimize and monetize your digital content. We have muted all of the attendees, so we'll kind of have just panelists speaking on the call today. That said, we do want to hear from everybody, so please use the chat button on the Zoom screen to just pepper in questions as you have them. Most of the session today will be really a panel discussion, and that'll be a chance for everybody to have their question answered, and we'll try to kind of take those real time as they happen. Of course, this is a Zoom call, so we'll have a recording of this ready to go after we wrap up. If you're here and you've registered, or if you haven't, if you're not here and you're registered, you will be able to have a link and download this and watch on demand anytime. So just as a quick agenda, as I said, we'll kind of kick it off with some introductions. We'll have our three panelists have a brief introduction about who they are and what they're doing. It'll be a fairly short presentation. We try to keep the PowerPoint slides very light for this session and focus more on discussion. After each person presents their few slides, we'll go directly into the panel Q&A, and we'll have some seed questions. We might have some some polls we'll take of the audience. So keep an eye out for that, and again, please answer those questions as they come up. Again, we hope this to be a very engaging and exciting session. Okay, let's get going. So on just a bit about Mather. So let me introduce myself first. So I'm Arvid. I'm the managing director of our digital consulting practice. About Mather, we're based in Atlanta. There's about 50 of us total, mostly economists and data scientists. And we work primarily in media, though really our expertise is in managing recurring revenue. That's really where I think our data science and solutions really shine. And of course, I won't go through all of these points here, but we have a lot of clients. Again, we're actually turning 20. Our founding date, I think, was in May of 20 years ago. So that'll be an exciting event for all of us here. You can see, as I mentioned, it's a pretty eclectic group today. So we have people presenting from 3 continents, from Brazil, from Europe, and North America. Of course, we work with a lot of clients around the globe. You can see most of the brands here are in some version of recurring revenue, a lot of media clients, of course. But again, I think what we try to do is curate the agenda today to share a broad perspective across different continents with a vastly different markets. Obviously, Brazil is very different from Northern Central Europe, different from the US. The brands are in some cases national publications, in some cases they're magazines, B2B magazines, in some cases, direct-to-consumer digital subscriptions, formerly legacy print newspapers. So it's a pretty eclectic mix, and also a pretty a lot of differences between where they are in the kind of digital transformation stage. So some are a bit ahead of the curve, some are kind of on the path, and of course that's all very unique and helpful. So hopefully there's a piece of information for everyone they can take home, and they can hopefully find some relevance for everyone in these presentations. Just a bit about Mather, one last comment from us. So, the question of how do you monetize content comes up a lot. And, immediately usually the answer is, well, you put up some kind of paywall. And that's true. That's part of the monetization strategy, is what kind of paywall do you have? Do you have a meter? Do you have a premium wall? Do you have a data wall? What is free content? But it's not just that piece of it. It's really, how do you as an organization align around recurring revenue, around how do you match the content that you're producing with the value that readers will find from it? How do those pieces come together? And that's really, I think, a lot of the presentations today. It's not just business rules and technical business rules. It's really about how do you kind of holistically as a company come together and hit your goals on monetizing your content. That's really the goal of today, is to share best practices there. So I'll stop talking. I'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Veebha is Veebha Mehta. She's the Chief Marketing Officer at Crain Communication. She actually had a stint at Financial Times a while back, and she's really responsible for, again, guiding and executing the strategy for converting or transforming Crain Communications into a digital-first, subscriptions-first brand. And we had the pleasure of working with Veebha on a few of those kind of topics. But I'll stop talking here and pass it off to Veebha to kick us away.
Thanks, Arvid. Thanks, Shelley. Hi, everyone. I thought I would just give you sort of an overview today of how Crain has sort of looked at the subscription business and what we've done over the last 2 years, of what's worked and what hasn't worked. So it's a quick overview, and I'll be happy to take any questions to talk through details. So for anyone who's not familiar with Crain, we are a 100-plus-year-old business news media company. We've been around a long time, and we've got 20-plus brands, and we serve very, very niche verticals. So, and as a result of that, we have very loyal audiences, people who've read us for decades, and they've been very, very engaged with the business. And that's one of the reasons I've divided this up into pre-2020 and today, because unlike a lot of other media companies that are more broadly focused, we didn't have to jump on the subscription train for a while. We were very successful with an advertising first model, very print focused. And as a company, we'd been talking about subscriptions, but it's not something we really focused on till 2019. So pre-2020, we were very print-led. Everything about the company was print first. The technology, the marketing, the newsroom, all of it. And as a result, we were circulation focused. So we were generating some revenue from subscriptions. We had a lot of print subscriptions, but again, the conversation was circulation because that's what powered our advertising business. And then the newsroom was only talking about page views because that's what you need to generate ad impressions that drive ad revenue. So that's where we were, 2020, and then came the pandemic, and it changed a lot for us. So today, the conversation we're having is very different. We're talking about the digital experience, whether it's the newsroom, it's marketing, it's technology, all the decisions we're making. The conversation we're having is all about digital first user experience. Instead of talking about circulation, which supports advertising, we're talking about the audience. So what does our audience want to read? What are they engaging with? What's the user experience they expect? What's the price they want to pay? So very different conversation. And then I think the most important thing is what's happening in our newsroom, which is we're not talking about page views, but we're talking about engagement. And we've implemented some technology. We're using data much more. We're using something called metrics for news. And the newsroom is now looking at how are readers engaging with content and how is that assisting with subscriptions. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the way we did that, and we're still doing this, it's, we're sort of two and a half years in, is we focused the three legs of the stool, the newsroom, the marketing, and the technology, all on the same goal. And it's not the same metric, but it's the same goal. So every sort of point on this triangle has different metrics. So the newsroom is focused on specific metrics. Marketing team, my team, is focused on specific metrics. The technology team has their own metric, but they're all tied to the same goal, which is growing subscriber revenue. And we picked this because that's what we are focused on. We're a private company. We don't have other stakeholders. We want to focus only on revenue. So that's how we have done it, and that's what we're focused on at the moment. So diving a little bit into what each of these groups have done is the newsroom. So we obviously have a paywall. That's the middle of that's kind of what powers our subscription revenue. The newsroom has embraced content metrics, and I mentioned this earlier. And we consider ourselves data informed, not data led. So there's always a fine line between, sort of leaning so much on the data that you're just writing about what the readers are reading. So there's a fine line between taking your cues from the data, but also serving your purpose as a news organization, which is informing people about what they need to know. So we are embracing metrics. We use Adobe Analytics, we use Chartbeat, we use metrics for news, and we are data informed. The second piece that we've really doubled down on is focusing on our core business. And why this is even more important is because it is content that actually converts the reader. People are paying for the content. So we have a very clear value proposition across our 20 plus brands, which is we help people in business succeed. And that's what we just double down on a lot. And the data helps you focus on that even more. And the third thing that I'll mention is that we've anointed audience czars in the newsroom. And these people are sort of the bridge between what the audience is saying and what the newsroom is doing. So they keep the newsroom informed about what's happening on social media. They're the ones looking at the data multiple times a day and educating the newsroom while the newsroom stays focused on what they do well, which is generate content. Technology, the same thing. We're investing in a new subscription management system. And that's, we had a circulation business, so it was a different system. And that's allowing us now to capture data differently, to segment the customer data, to personalize the experience. And at the same time, we're rethinking our newsroom workflow, which was very print-led. And we're now making it digital focused, focusing on our newsletters, focusing on social media and how we manage the website. And then lastly, on the marketing front, our marketing was very different. We were about volume. We were about generating print circulation. So we were all about the offer, and now we're all about the content. Everything we do is around taking the content and putting it in front of the reader that it's most relevant to. We're doing a lot of testing and experience optimization on our website. That includes everything from UI to pricing to, even headlines. Everything is being tested. And then we have focused a lot on retention and customer service. And the particular reason for this is that about 75% of our revenue comes from repeat customers, and being B2B in niche markets makes that even more valuable because we don't have a huge audience. So we have to hold on to the people we have. We've got a bunch of strategies we put in place around reducing churn, win backs, onboarding people. And then we are relooking at customer service from just being a very transactional service to being much more of an acquisition and retention channel. Last slide, please. So all of this, it's a lot of things that I mentioned, and all of this has happened in a very short span of time. So it has required us to change, and it's led to a lot of cultural change in the company. And we have new skill sets. The people that I started here a little over 2 years ago, and the people that I worked with in my first month, and the people I work with today, there's a whole new set of people. So we've got new skill sets and new ways of working, because obviously we are operating so differently. And obviously some things have worked well and some things are still in progress. And what's in progress is obviously a longer list, but I try to keep it balanced here. We've hired new talent and we've reallocated existing talent to new roles. That's worked really well for us. We're focusing on analytics. I mentioned this already. And then we have a shared focus between the newsroom and the marketing group on amplification of content. So every channel that we have, social media, our websites, our mobile app, our newsletters, all of it is about making sure that we're working in tandem to get that content in front of our reader. And what's still in progress is training existing talent. We've, again, certain way of doing business for a long, long time. We're still making changes there. Setting benchmarks, I think this is a big one. I've dabbled in this my whole career, and you can pull benchmarks from different places. Mather's helped us out. We've worked with other partners. But we're trying to be mindful. We have 20 plus brands, and each brand has a different audience and a different need. So we're still trying to set benchmarks. And then lastly, managing transition. We are moving quickly. We are going digital first, but we still have revenue streams that are traditional that we need to maintain until we can replace that revenue. So we're straddling two worlds, and that's always interesting. So that's, in progress, and we'll continue to work on that. But, to wrap up, I'll just say that we've had, great success, and all of it has been a result of the collaboration that happens between the newsroom, the technology team, and the marketing group.
Yeah, thank you, Veebha. I know it was tough to keep that short. There's probably about 50 questions I have just immediately hearing you speak there. I'll do my best to save those until the panel discussion. But yeah, thank you for that. That was excellent. And a great way to kick us off. I think it sets the stage for just the how holistic of a transformation it really is. It's not just put up a paywall and that's it. It's really a all-in technology, marketing, newsroom, all kind of following the same North Star. So yeah, excellent. So, we talked about, or Veebha talked about newsroom a lot. So now we have next Yves Banduran. So he is the officially Mediahouse's data and insights expert. I think he does a lot more than just that. But he is based in Antwerp in Belgium, and he is really responsible for leading the adoption and optimization of data and metrics in newsrooms across a number of different media house brands, not just dashboards, but also, again, a lot of the culture change that Veebha alluded to as well. And I think he'll speak a bit about sort of what is happening at Mediahuis and just the ways that they've approached it from the newsroom perspective. So Yves, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. And just as Veebha, I think we have a lot of things in common, what keeps us awake. But one of the elements I wanted to talk about, just to pick one that kept me busy in the last couple of months, was, let's say, initiated by the frustration of how we did analytics. So when you're analyzing your content, and I think people busy with paywalls and smart paywalls, I think the first question you need to answer is what's selling subscriptions. So it's very easy. It's probably also one of the questions that Mehta tries to answer on a daily basis. But it was really frustrating for us because most of the elements we know about our stories are about the what are the stories about. So the things we get out of our analytics, so the things we analyzed and saw, that was more like do more or less of politics, sports, or maybe, let's say, celebrity news and so on. So if you come with those kind of outcomes to the newsroom, yeah, it's not really serious. You can't, let's say, organize internal competition. You can't say, okay, sport is not very successful in driving subscriptions, so do a bit more of politics. So it's just not how things work. So it's very difficult. So, and it was really frustrating. Also, the editorial choices you have are very limited. So it's the news comes to the journalist now. So in some cases, they make their own news, but it's more like an exception. So it's a kind of news seller market. So it's not the journalists that decide which topics need to be covered. It's the things that happen in the world. So it's very difficult when you start analyzing your content on performance, let's say what sells subscription and what doesn't. In the what question is very tough one. So we wanted to steer away from that. And we tried to answer extra things. So what we try to do then is, and it's a project we called internally article DNA, but it's just, we try to figure out which characteristics were important to put next to our stories that defined those stories. And that's the next slide. So instead of going only around the what, we try to answer the why and the how. And that's something we do have in control as a journalist. The how is something you decide on a daily basis. So, and a couple of things we added to the article characteristics was first, well, why did we produce this story? And it's a very easy question to answer. But when you start analyzing, it appears that the stories you create without the need of being there, so not just following the news, but okay, a journalist decided to do something out of their own experience or whatever, those are really the stories that our readers like. And on the how part, I think the two most important we decided were user needs and genre. So user needs we kind of lended from Dmitry Shishkin. He worked for the BBC World Service, and you probably saw those elements on the right side already in other projects. So the user needs is really how we bring, so what with what purpose do we bring this piece? Do we need to make sure that people understand the topic? Is it a bit, let's say, a diversion, so away from the serious news and stuff? You see a couple of those elements on the right side. And we also added the genre, is the journalistic format. We really wanted to see in what occasions, let's say, an interview or a Q&A or an interview or a portrait, obituary, what works well in what kind of occasion and environments. And so those are the things we did. So what came out of it is within certain sections or even topics like COVID, how did we best bring those stories? And we're really learning from it. And I'm really excited about it because it's not all about optimization. And we do so. We have projects together with macroeconomics, and we learn a lot from them because those guys really have the algorithms to look behind all those figures and tell us what we need to do. But I think also interesting is for the first time within the company, we saw that it really got attention from the newsroom because it's about their work. It's not just like a sales figure going up. It's just how they work and how they can bring the best possible product to their readers. So we really got attention with it, and it was a very positive feedback we get with all the brands we are introducing this article DNA project. And as an additional bonus, it's also when you start using things like user need and genre, and when you explicitly use them in, let's say, reporting, people start to use those wordings also on the newsroom, and they exchange knowledge with that newly developed language, and I really like that also. Good, that's about it, I think. But this is just about the characteristics, everything you know about your articles. But I think it's just the beginning, because yeah, a news site or a newspaper, it's not just a list of stories. No, it's not just a bunch of articles. It's really a well-balanced mix on how you bring stuff. And maybe, yeah, I use always the soup slide over here. Maybe the topics that are in your soup, maybe those are the vegetables, but then you need to spice up, or maybe how large are the portions of those vegetables and stuff, and which spices you use. That is more, I think, how you bring the news. So I think a good newspaper or a good news site has a well-balanced topic selection, and it depends, of course, on your brand. When you're a popular brand, you have more sports and human interest, and when you're a brand like the Financial Times, it's probably more like a stock market and stuff. Those are different vegetables, and then you kind of spice things up, and it's how you bring them. Or interviews, a good way of bringing stuff, and so on. So those are the things we're really learning. And you see, I also, like Veebha, I used a triangle in my slide. I think it's also interesting to see how those things interact with each other. So on top you have your brand. So the brand really defines how you bring stories and what kind of stories you bring. So that's the brand that decides. So, and your articles are defined how the stories are brought, and your readers on the right side, they will decide how they react to it. And it's very interesting to see in the reaction between those three elements, how things come together. And that's what we try to do with specific dashboards. And you have on the right side, you have the screenshot of our content mix dashboard. It's not in absolute figures, but again, it's the mix, because probably in the weekend you have more articles than, let's say, on a Tuesday. And what we try to do is, you see, and it's the light blue bars, you see, it's what we bring to the audience in what kind of mix. And you see that the entertain me elements are, let's say, 10% of what we bring. And the dark blues are the ones how our audiences react to it. So it's the attention time we measure. How is it divided over all those, in this case, user needs? And it's very interesting to see how people react to those elements. And it's exactly also how we cooperate with macroeconomics to find those things out in a more complex way.
Yeah, that's thank you, Yves, for that. And I've been very impressed with the work you've been doing with the article DNA throughout Mediahuis. So it's certainly, it was new for us when we first learned of it. I think it was last year, maybe a few years ago. But yeah, to your point, the exciting part for us, of course, is always how you optimize. And we have the luxury of you've already kind of done the hard work of getting the buy-in from the newsroom already. That's sometimes the hardest part.
That's the toughest, yeah, really.
Yeah. So again, it makes our job easier when we're just there as the data guys, and we can optimize, and then it's sort of already bought in on the vision. So excellent. Okay, our third speaker today, I'll introduce. So Anderson Demien. So I had the pleasure actually of meeting Anderson through a Google News Initiative project with 8 other or 7 other publishers in South America. So he was very kind and hosted us in Sao Paulo. Very kind. But his role is he's had various audience and kind of marketing roles at Folha de Sao Paulo. He was recently actually promoted to the executive level. He's now the director of consumer marketing and digital strategy for all of Folha de Sao Paulo. And really, he's, I think we'll talk about just the consumer marketing side of it. But of course, content, as both Veebha and Yves indicated, is a key part of that consumer marketing go-to-market strategy. So yeah, Anderson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Arvid, and for the invitation to be here. And hello, everyone. It's good morning, Brazil. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about Folha. Folha de São Paulo. It's a national newspaper. If you can go to the next slide, please, Shelley. Yeah, we have around 200 million monthly page views in here, so it's a huge audience considering Brazil also is a huge country. So and we are now with 360,000 subscribers, and 300 of them only digital. So you can see that if you worked in these last 3 or 4 years, very concentrated and very focused on the digital transformation of our subscription base. So how it's a very conceptual presentation, so I'm going for the main strategy. So yeah, next please. Yeah, so how we think subscription here. Initially, we analyze the content you have and try to understand which technology and how can we engage readers, or how can improve readers' experience and with our products and the experience, the usability of our products, and then working with reader segmentation, propensity paywall and propensity analysis, which kind of reader are more propensity subscriber, or there are different kind of segmentations where they're coming, which kind of content they like to read. And at this stage, we reached a very high growth rate monthly and also yearly, of course, because the moments that we've been in Brazil and the world, but also strategies that we haven't applied before. So we found a very important way of growth in there, looking for the reader's experience and reader's segmentation. And then we saw that we need to go further on the content as well to understand how you can keep its growth path, producing or using the content more or different kind of content to attract news readers and attract new subscribers as well. Yeah, if you can go to next. Yeah, so we made this analysis of your content with Mother help us on how we could figure out which kind of content you should focus on give more visibility, not necessarily produce, but to advertisement for the readers or for the ones that are more likely to subscribe. And so we analyze what kind of content we need to use more to get just people on our website, and also to come then to the readers on subscribers as well. Yeah, so yeah, we started using we started using a meter per paywall initially. Now you have a premium paywall as well. So now both both kind of segmentations in our paywall represent almost the same level of acquisition. Also the reader segmentation and the premium content segmentation, both of them driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we also learned how to promote content that convert. As I said, it's not necessary producing content, but promoting them on our websites, on the channels you have, and also paid marketing. And we use also newsletter for that. Which kind of content we can use on our newsletter? Which kind of newsletter can you have more to get subscribers on our base? So yeah, that's a conceptual presentation of how we're working here on the acquisition strategy. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Anderson. And I think the common theme, and I'll move into the panel discussion next here, but the common theme is it's very much a joint, strategy. So as Veebha talked about the connection of newsroom and marketing and of course technology, Yves from the newsroom side and how he is able to kind of get buy-in and make the newsroom understand that they're also part of this subscription, growth and hitting these goals. And then Anderson from the side of the consumer marketing, being very much in sync with what content works well. So he can go out there and promote it and make sure journalists are getting the value that they deserve. So it's, again, I think that the common thread here is that kind of connection between consumer marketing, data, of course, and the newsroom. And, again, I mentioned it's a very diverse group. So Veebha from the B2B magazine side, Anderson in Brazil, and Yves as a kind of corporate kind of oversight across multiple brands in Northern Europe. It's the same thing. So I think we're all closer to each other than we maybe sometimes want to admit. Well, cool. Well, let's go into the panel. So again, for the folks on the call, attendees, please just start adding questions to the chat. I see we have a few already, so we'll get to those as they come in. But I want to start first with Veebha, if I can put you on the spot. So you talked a lot about, the kind of pre-2020 and post-2020 and the transformation from circ to subs and audience, page views to engagement, and the cultural change. In your experience, is that a slow burn? Was there kind of an inflection point where you kind of notice, everyone all of a sudden is now in the same direction? Or I guess, what was your experience in terms of just the timing of that, and what was a game changer for you to see that being realized?
So I think it's interesting, I started at the company just at the time of the pandemic, literally a few weeks before everything went crazy. But I think it was a slow burn before that. I think the company had been trying to move in this direction for a couple of years, and there was some infrastructure set up as a result to do that, but we really hadn't embraced it. And then came COVID, and it changed a lot because print took a big hit. People couldn't get their copies. There was distribution problems. It was a point in time we were scared of touching anything that arrived at our homes and cleaning it up. So, we hit that moment, and there was crazy amounts of traffic that hit all our websites. I think we all probably saw it. And we had a paywall. We had invested in that technology already. We'd been working towards it, and all we had to do was dial it up. And we started to see that people were paying because they missed that content. And that's when we realized how valuable, we always knew it was valuable, but I think at that moment we realized people will pay for this. And fortunately, we had been working towards it, and there was a very, very dramatic pivot, and it's been extremely fast since then. So everything then followed, the marketing, the technology, it's all sort of been very quick from there. But I would say COVID is kind of the big game changer for us.
Sure. So in your case, at least, it was an external shock to the system, perhaps, or yes, you had the tools in place, but it was really
correct,
just that outside inflection point that
correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know if Yves or Anderson, if you have any thoughts on that. Was it similar for you, or were you already kind of on that path before COVID?
Well, talking about Mediahuis, we were already doing freemium stuff with the standard for years. But definitely, COVID was really a game changer. And I think when we look at the colleagues in Ireland of the Independent, they just started their paywall just before the COVID hit Europe. And yeah, there was an immediate success, of course. Now the thing now is, of course, to keep that level of engagement of your subscribers and to prevent churn. And that's again where the optimization and all the insights are very helpful.
I'd say the same. I think we started our intelligent paywall and focusing on digital strategy just in 2019, so just 1 year before the pandemic boom that comes to the news business. So when everything happened, we were already growing, doing this strategy, but this was a bumping for us definitely, and it was good for us also to start that before, because I think we made the most of the traffic, the new traffic that were coming.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit. There's a couple of questions from in the chat, so I'll do my best to moderate here. So just one quick thing in terms of just defining premium paywall versus metered versus others. So I think at least in terms of how we think about it, and Yves and Veebha Anderson, please correct me if I'm wrong, but premium wall is basically like a subscriber only article. So it's not metered. It's always behind a hard wall for that one type of article. And that's different from other articles that might be metered or perhaps behind a reg wall, but not, they're somewhat accessible depending on where you are in the user journey. Is that kind of how you think about premium content as well?
Well, at Mediahuis, we have different ones. I think most of the time we use the registration wall. So to make your prospect able to like sample your content. So a very hard like premium paywall where you can't read anything of the high value content without a subscription. It's a very harsh wall to get over. You need to pay in order to sample. So it's difficult. So we really believe in the we call it a porous wall. Also, it's a registration wall. After registration, you get a certain amount of articles access free per month or whatever time frame we have. And it's successful. You can play around with it. You can leverage the amount of, or maybe lower the amount of free to sample articles. Also the amount of time that goes over to reset the amount of credits and so on. So you can play around with it, and we really like it and we're fond of it. But on the other hand, a hard paywall without the possibility for registration to access and sample things, it's still very successful. We had a launch of a paywall, and the porous part, so the registration part wasn't ready yet. So we launched it just as a hard paywall, and it was very successful. And it really took us months before we put it off and made it available, the registration part. So the tougher your paywall, the better your conversion rates. Huh?
Right. Very good. So go ahead.
Yeah, we use in here the content paywall, what some people call it premium paywall, and also the metered paywall. Some of our articles are, I would say, free, but depending on the reader's actions. So you can, most of our articles, I would say, are free, and part of our articles are in a hard paywall. So that's what I call premium. So the big question here is what kind of article you can put on a hard paywall and not. So yeah, that's where we are working and where we are improving.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Cool. So there's a few questions around metrics. So maybe we can pivot a little bit and talk about what are your key performance metrics, and are there any of those that are is it more of a high level metric that you look at across the organization? Like in Veebha's case, I think it was just subscriber revenue was the big one, but then each individual group had distinct metrics. Can you maybe just list out what how you manage that and how you kind of make sure that a metric that is in the newsroom's sort of purview is 100% aligned with that subscription revenue? How do you kind of connect the dots there?
Well, if that the question around, let's say, the North Star. So North Star should be the value you're hunting with the whole of the company. Let's say in the manufacturer like Apple, it can be the devices sold. So it's very clear for everyone what to achieve. Within a publishing company, you see different things. I think Financial Times Strategies uses the RFV value. At Mediahuis, we use the attention time as a metric in the newsroom because it's very well understood and it's not too complex. So, but to be exact, we use the attention time not for all of the audiences, but only the subscribers, and that's a very nice one. So we use the attention time only for the subscribers. But I see there is a poll coming up, and maybe I will add to the comments later on then.
Yeah, so yeah, sorry, I think that kind of triggered a little bit sooner than I expected, but yeah, just maybe poll to the audience, if you wouldn't mind also just voting, do you have a North Star metric you use currently as an organization, or do you just have some other method? And that's okay too, but we'll let folks put in their answers for a few more seconds here. So Yves, you were talking about, attention time you use for just the subscribing users, and then you say you have an RFB kind of metric just for the general audience. Is that what I heard?
No, we don't use the RFE. So yeah, the colleagues in Ireland, they use the RFE. They work together with FT strategies, and they came out with the RFE elements, and it's still very interesting. So I really like the RFE elements, but to explain that to your newsroom and your journalist, it's a tough one. So we like to keep things simple, and we use the attention time, and that's the net attention time that people really pay attention, are actively reading on your site. It's not the time spent or whatever, it's really being active, scrolling with your page and reading, or maybe playing a video or listening to audio. So that's the net attention time we use. It's very easy to explain because everybody understands it. And we do the same as Netflix, don't we? So it's just we're all in the attention business. So it's YouTube is asking attention, Facebook is, and Netflix, and we're all in the same business. So it's very easy to explain it. It's very well accepted in the newsroom, that one.
Looks like we have some results here. So overall, somehow time on site or attention time was fairly low. So I think Yves, you maybe forgot to vote.
But maybe I can add to that, because I think the attention time is very nice in the newsroom, but probably a lot of people in the call will be responsible for the B2C, so for the sales figures. And then again, the RFE makes more sense, because recency, you can't define recency or frequency of an article. It's just not that easy, but for your readers, it is very important. And also those elements, if we look at the, let's say, propensity to buy and churn modeling, RFEs are really important features. You probably know that, Arvid. So I think it depends on what side of the business you are, but if you're on the journalistic side, I think RFE is a tougher one to use than the attention time. But by all means, you should use all the components available. So when you're working on a smart paywall or on a personalization algorithm, don't only use attention time, use all those elements you have at your disposal to make a model as good as possible. But when you're talking to humans, no, I think one clear metrics is the way to go. But when talking to machines, they can handle everything.
So a question to Veebha and Anderson. So, Veebha, you talked about moving from page views to engagements in your discussion, and Anderson, you actually showed your total page views. I think it was 200 million page views per month in your slide. So I guess I'm curious your perspective on the role of the page view in digital strategy, and I'll just leave it there. Open question.
Interesting question. I mean, I think it's more about, quality of the sort of engagement your reader, or the interaction your reader has with your content. And that's what we're trying to move towards. So we still, yes, we look at page views as how many pages are our readers turning, or how many articles they're clicking on. But the culture at our company was very much about just, making people just click, so that we were generating impressions. And I think that's what we're making the switch to. Is so we use Metrics for News, which has an engagement metric that we get to define, which brings a few elements together, which is the number of stories, the frequency, the time. So, and that's what we're trying to get the newsroom to look at, because sometimes, if you take an example like automotive news, sometimes a story about a car gets a lot of page views, and it generates a lot of ad impressions, but it's not really a story that's going to drive the user to come back, because a lot of one-off users or it's not going to get them to pay. So that's why we're trying to move the conversation. Page views is a piece of it, but it's not the only metric we're trying to look at, we want to look at.
Yeah, I totally agree with Veebha. I think page views is more a market metric, but internally we look more for things like time spent or how many subscribers have the article have reached, and it's a different way of thinking when we talk internally, but it's a market metric when you go to share some numbers. Yeah, but it's not the main metric that's working here.
Very cool. Yeah, good discussion on North Star. Again, I think there's obviously the simplicity is helpful, especially with that newsroom buy-in. But of course, sometimes the more advanced metrics help kind of align. So again, it depends, I think, who you're talking to, obviously. But no, very, very interesting perspectives from.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to the page view, Arvid, because we didn't throw it away completely because it depends on what's your responsibility within the company. So if you're a writer, you're probably responsible to write excellent content that people are really reading. So attention time makes completely sense. But on the other hand, if you have like an audience team or content marketeers, their responsibility is to get people to the article. That's it. So their responsibility is page views, no? So you can't evaluate your content marketeer on attention time only. So because it's not their responsibility to write excellent articles. So they need to get the people to the article, and then it's the responsibility of the writer to keep people on that page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Sticking in the newsroom kind of topic a little bit more, there's a question from Conan Galati out of Tampa here in the US. He asked about really the kind of the balance of not just the kind of performance of the articles, but also the cost to produce. So I'm curious, and obviously a give me insight kind of story is going to be maybe a bit more costly than an update me.
I really like that question, and we had it in the list of our article DNA characteristics. So we called it the effort score, and it was a very simple scoring. Let's say from 1 to 5. Where 3 is like a median story and a 1 is just a Reuters story, you copy paste, whatever. And a 5 is like an investigative work taking you like weeks. So it made sense to us. And also that gives also information on what articles we should promote properly, because that's probably also an excellent piece. If there is a lot of effort, let's say you provided a video or whatever, it should also deserve the right amount of attention and also promotion. But the thing is, it's a very creepy factor, because if editors need to put in there the amount of effort they've put in an article, they will never say low. And it's also a kind of, creepy in the sense of a big brother. If their manager like checks the amount of articles they produce and they are all low effort, it's a kind of, you're also measuring the how they work, and so it completely disappeared. So we didn't get it sold on the newsroom. So the effort score, although it's a very nice one and I really like it and I want it, but we can't use it in the newsroom yet. So what we do now is we look at the amount of let's say characters produced as a kind of proxy of the amount of work that went into it. But it's very it has all its shortcomings for sure. So maybe in the future we can come back again to the effort score. I really would like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had that question come up as well, and it's a very hard thing to measure, and also just again the buy-in is key, and it's also perhaps it's just an evolution. I think if you go back even 5 years, or even a few years for some publishers, the concept of a reporter tracking or understanding how content impacts subscribers, even that was controversial, I think, in many cases. That I think in most places has kind of been handled, but I think that maybe the next future would look like is you do have some cost metric in there, and it's whether it's a proxy or intuitive or something more explicit like 1 to 5. I'm very curious how that will work. So pivoting a little bit to consumer marketing, maybe I'll pick on Anderson a bit. So there's a question from Harpreet. He asks about do you actually label content as premium if it's subscriber only on your sites to differentiate it from other metered or free content? Or do you just sort of keep it as, I know some publishers use a little lock icon, some might have like a star. Do you differentiate that in some way? And does that have an impact on the consumer marketing side and getting better conversions? Or yeah, curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, not yet. We are able to do, we've tested that. And when it comes to converting, yeah, so we've tried that. We are not sure if it's a good or not strategy yet. We are trying it, but nowadays we don't. We don't tag it.
Gotcha. I think Veebha, do you, I think on your site have something like
Yeah,
that?
we have it on one of our websites, but very similar to Anderson. You know, we're still testing this one. One of our automotive news, that's one of our brands that has it. Just I think they put it up. We put it up at a time when, you know, it was like things change in this business. It's like we must be transparent, so we put it up. But it does sort of prevent people from even sampling, clicking and maybe reading the first couple of headlines before they, you know, the first couple of lines before they hit the paywall. So we're testing it. We don't have it on the others. It's not something we're too focused on, but you know, eventually we'll need to look at it more closely.
Gotcha. Cool. So maybe pivoting back to some of the other questions that I had from listening to you talk, Veebha, about kind of the kind of where you're headed and the cultural and digital transformation. So what would you say is the role of print in your next 5 to 10 years? And how does that fit into the digital cultural transformation?
It's going to change, that's for sure. You know, print is still a very healthy piece of our business. We have a slightly older readership, and everything that we've looked at, print is very much still a part of the mix. I mean, when I was at the FT years ago, we were talking about, is print going to be here or not? It's still here. So I think it's for us, we are figuring out brand by brand, really, because we have different niche verticals, what it looks like. So it's a couple of our brands, we're looking at changing frequency. For example, do we want to do fewer issues because we've been weekly? Do we need that many issues? We're also looking at a value proposition change. Does print become a different kind of product from what's available online? Because, you know, news changes so quickly that a weekly publication is redundant. So what happens to that publication? Can it be a keepsake? So I don't have a clear direction yet that I can share, but we're looking at different options. And, you know, we still have advertisers interested in print. We still have readers interested in print. So we don't see it, you know, going away across the board, but it will be different depending on our brand and, you know, what our readers want from it.
Do you see any of that decision making in kind of that future? Do you feel it's going to be like, again, an external shock to the system, or is it something that you're trying to kind of strategize on product mix and different product tiers? Is that kind of what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, we're strategizing. We're definitely strategizing. I mean, we're expecting change. So like a brand like Ad Age, you know, it's already moving away from digital. There's an audience of marketers and advertisers, they don't want print. And then we have a brand, you know, like Plastics News or, you know, automotive news, where there's still a healthy demand. So we are strategizing. We don't want to be shocked by it, and we expect not to be shocked by it.
Okay. Cool. So going back to Anderson a little bit. So back on the kind of you know, acquisition and testing, and you mentioned you have the intelligent paywall in 2019. You've of course had a paywall since 2012, I guess, and you've reached an impressive amount of subscribers. I think you shared it was 300,000 digital-only subscribers that you've collected. I'm curious, at this stage, you know, you've had a paywall for now 10 years. You've had, you know, reached a significant number of subscribers. Do you still see room for growth? That's kind of the question we see folks asking us a lot as they kind of reach certain milestones in their maturity, or just the age of their paywall. So I'm curious your kind of perspective on offer optimization or balancing start volume with retention. Are you seeing plateaus? And I guess, are you kind of finding ways to overcome those hurdles of reaching those plateaus?
Yeah, there's still room to improve, but of course the initial improvements are more impacted. I mean, we are going now in a slow growth, I would say. Everything you do, there's some increment, not slow, but incremental growth. The big tactics we already use it. So initially the results were very impactful, but now you see that you need to go deeper and deeper to get 2 or 3 more percent of increasing on the base. But yeah, we are now looking for the content more deeply on the content paywall, as I said, and we've worked a lot in these last years looking for the focusing on the reader experience. So now we are trying to figure out how can we better use the content we produce on this path. Of course, we already do that, but I think if it's the next next stage of improvement will be from the side. And yeah, sometimes after we go through a huge incoming of subscription due to something that's happening in political or in news that are coming, we see some plateaus, but now we are going for this incremental growth, and we still believe in a next level that we are working on with this premium and maybe some different strategy on the signing wall, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good, interesting question, and I'll bring it back to the chat. There's one question that from Tanner Rodes. He asks, the role of behavioral metrics or conditions to trigger paywalls across the website. So, of course, an intelligent paywall, you're using some sort of decision making around the user and the behavior. And again, with the premium wall or the content wall, it's really just a hard wall for that article. So again, it's kind of a broad question, but I guess, are there, do you see any intersection of, how that content can be triggered depending on the user? And I guess, is anyone testing that, or has that come up in discussions within Veebha or Yves or Anderson within your kind of goals for the next few years?
I think we'll be working on that one. So I think it's all about, not personalization yet, but segmentation at least. So not everyone visits your site and reads your content in the same way. So we're really figuring out now how strict the paywall can be. And probably those with the highest propensity to buy will get a stricter paywall than those that will never, let's say, buy a subscription. And it's like, maybe just to be very short. So a student of 18 will never be buying your subscription, let's say, for 15 euros a month. So it's also how to know your audience, and that's also why we really focus on getting people registered. So they need to give some elements, and we can follow them on different devices and stuff. So to know your customer is really key over here in with regards to behavior. And it's also interesting if you know more about your customer, it also says something about your content. So you saw the triangle in one of the slides. So of course, what people read says something about your customer or reader, but also vice versa. Who reads your article says something about the article. So you can later on, you can decide, let's say, to analyze what are young people reading. This is a young article or an old article, or maybe a female article or whatever. So behavior is really a key in segmenting view on what you're doing. So I really like that also in the analysis.
Sure. I'm curious too on that kind of intersection of content and audience, because it's a place that we spend a lot of time trying to connect the dots between what kind of content is relevant for a certain type of reader or a certain type of audience, whether it's on the site today, or whether it's someone you're trying to reach that hasn't even discovered your content. It's kind of the big question of how do you kind of optimize that. So the question I have for the group, really, anybody who'd like to take this, is how much of that can be really automated versus how much is more kind of human driven, I guess. And I don't know if I'm asking the question quite clearly, but I guess, do you see room for automation in these kind of decisions, or is it still purely something the newsroom decides that the consumer marketing director will kind of align and guide that? And at what point do you kind of, are there opportunities to automate, or is it mostly still going to be a very much, creative journey for newsrooms and marketers?
Well, from our side, I would say that you can always test in our market, but we do a lot of automated indications in here. Of course, the process or the machine indicated something, but we don't necessarily go for it. So yeah, that's as you said, that's the big question: which kind of content you can put on a hard paywall or not. But when it comes to the reader segmentation, so then we can have different insights on this. We have like more than 30 kind of segmentations on our paywall. Behavior is one of them, but also where people are coming from. I mean, the state or the country. We are a national newspaper, so which city are this guy coming from? Can you have a different offer, a different message for them? Some insights on behavior as well. Which kind of content these people are more likely to subscribe, or which kind of message can I offer? Which kind of different content can I offer for them? Not exactly to subscribe at that moment, but read another article. It's also some thinking here that we try a lot to go for next click. We say not every time I show you the offer of the offer to do a subscription, but I can offer you to go for a next section that we have in our website. So in the user side, there's a lot of machine learning, and we are trying to figure out how to go for it on the content side. But definitely there's an indication of the machine by now, and interaction of humans say, oh, yeah, let's see, let's try, let's close it for some hours and see what happens. We are learning how to work on this yet, but the machine learning is there, indicating the articles, but not every article that are scored for closing are closed. So yeah.
I think we will see, Arvid, like a stepped approach. So let's say in the beginning, you decide as a newsroom what articles go behind the paywall and which don't. And then the second one is like data informed, and so you guys are helping us with that. So you have an algorithm that can kind of predict what's the best way of putting this article on your site, whether it's premium or not. So we will definitely have that step. But I think finally we will have a decision engine that's completely automated, will decide which things will be put premium or free, and maybe that can be different for every user on your website. And I think that's ultimately the goal of also the editor-in-chiefs over here. They say to us, we don't want to be bothered with deciding whether it's premium or not. We just want to make the best possible content. So don't bother us with, so let's say 50 years ago, they just created an excellent newspaper and they want to do that again. So they don't want to be bothered with deciding whether it's something goes behind the paywall or not. I think in the end, it will be the algorithm that will be deciding whether something is premium or not.
Cool. Well, I think I know we're a bit over the hour here, so I'll kind of maybe ask one more question to each of the panelists. Or just one question for anybody who'd like to answer it, and we'll kind of go into wrap up. So my question is this: is there something in Veebha, you kind of shared the perspective from the executive level and kind of seeing the big pieces move kind of like chess pieces together to kind of align around this massive change. Yves, of course, from the newsroom perspective, kind of how does that get? How do they align that one piece of the puzzle? Anderson, of course, from consumer marketing and how they can go and promote and utilize all the great content that journalists are writing and how to promote it. Is there one thing that surprised you, good or bad? And is there any recommendation you have to the folks on the call on just anything that to avoid, pitfalls, a suggestion, something to always do? So kind of a broad question, but maybe Veebha, I'll start with you. One thing that surprised you and just a recommendation to the participants.
That's a great question. I mean, there were a lot of surprises, but I think one thing that has been very interesting, it's not as much of a surprise as interesting, is how the little details make a big difference, when you're trying to get someone to convert to a subscription. So you write great content and you put it in front of them, but the way that you present your paywall, the way that the source that they come from to read a particular story, I think all of those little things impact the price. Obviously, it all comes together. So it's not a surprise as much as it is quite nuanced, and everything has to work together to be able to drive a subscription. And that's what we're seeing over and over again, that you could get your content right, but if your technology isn't working, it's not going to go. You could have it, keep it the price low, but if the content is not resonating, they're just not going to buy because it's almost too cheap. So I think that's what's been interesting. We're still figuring it out, and it's going to take us a while to get to that, to perfect it if we ever do. But I think that's one advice I would give. Focus on all of it together and not just look at I'm producing great content, the rest will fall in place. It doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah, excellent. I guess, Anderson, you're unmuted, so I don't know, maybe you want to go next? I'll pick on you.
Yeah, I would say that segmentation, some kind of segmentations help us a lot. Segmentations based on the consumer behavior. So, of course, we have the propensity paywall, but mixing the propensity with some informations about kind of content this specific customers want to read and where they are coming from. You promoting what we produce on local news has helped a lot. So mixing propensity segmentation with other kinds of segmentations has helped a lot to improve specific groups of readers on our side. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I should have expected the consumer marketer to tell me segmentation is the #1 thing, but no, that's excellent. Yeah, Yves, do you want to, again, something that surprised you and any recommendation for participants today?
Well, yeah, segmentation is probably also one of them, and never use averages. You can drown in an average water of like 2 inches now. So the segmentation will definitely help you with that, to have a view on that and not make those kind of mistakes. But when we're talking about a news room that is being data informed, just like Veebha told, so we're not data driven, we're data informed. They act as individuals, so the journalists, but don't make the mistake to make things overly complex and like, let's say, drown them in dashboards and data. They're not like general analysts or even managers that are much more, let's say, data aware and use data on a daily basis. If you want to get them on board and start using the data, just keep it very simple and don't make dashboards for them. Just send them a little email with just the basic information they need. Make it look good, make it with images and nice fonts and stuff. Do those kind of things. And one of the other things we did in the newsroom to make everybody aware that we need to be data informed is put up huge TV screens. And now with COVID gone, everybody's going back to the newsroom. So when those screens are there, it's like a statement of the editor-in-chief saying, okay, also use data to do your daily job.
Excellent. Yeah, this was fantastic. So I'll just close by saying two more quick things. So one, again, of course, I'm always humbled when, folks kind of reference, Mather and kind of what we do. So again, I thank you for the partnership from all three of you, and kind of just the chance to work with you. Again, I think you're doing great things. So we're just, again, happy to contribute in our small way along the bigger journey that everyone's on. So of course, if there's any interest in kind of what we can do to help, as always, reach out to me. I think the other panelists were very generous in giving out their information as well. So again, if you don't want to hear from me anymore, but hear from the panelists directly, as always, reach out as needed. A huge thank you to everybody who was here today. Very special and huge thank you to Yves, Veebha, and Anderson. Thank you for your time today. Hopefully it was helpful for everybody. And again, we'll share the copy of this recording with everybody who had registered to the session. And as always, reach out to myself, reach out to any of the panelists, and yeah, have a happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.
Bye.